All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tracing a forbidden romance that started as a local secret and ended up completely and tragically reshaping Indian law. We're going back to 2007 to Karora, which is a small town in Haryana. Now, on the surface, Karora looked like any modernizing town with its schools and businesses. But beneath that surface, it was tightly governed by a rigid, ancient set of rules enforced by the local Jat community. So we're going to walk through this intense timeline of love, a horrific betrayal, a massive community cover-up, and the incredible legal battle that followed. Now think about this. 14 days. That is the exact, incredibly brief length of time Manoj and Babli's marriage actually lasted before their village's ancient rules violently caught up with them. Just 2 weeks. For Manoj and Babli, those 14 days were their entire lifespan as a married couple. It was this tiny window of freedom after they made the monumental and ultimately fatal decision to run away from absolutely everything they knew. To fully grasp why their union was cut so short, we really have to dig into these specific societal laws they broke just by falling in love. So to understand why they had to run in the first place, you need to understand the absolute rules of Karora village. In this community, there's a concept called Gotra, which is essentially a shared ancestral lineage. Because Manoj and Babli shared the same Gotra, they were legally and socially considered brother and sister. And look, it didn't matter one bit that they weren't closely related in any modern sense. The tradition was absolute. And the enforcers of this tradition, they were the khap panchayat. This is a deeply powerful community council of village elders who govern local affairs. And the khap didn't just frown upon this relationship. No, they viewed it as an unforgivable sin, a crime that demanded the harshest possible punishment. To make matters even more complicated, the stark contrast between Manoj and Babli made their love story completely unlikely and honestly, incredibly dangerous. Picture this. Manoj was a 23-year-old guy who had to grow up fast. His father had passed away, so he ran a local electronics shop just to support his widowed mother, Chandrapati, and his younger siblings. On the other hand, you have Babli. She was a 19-year-old student from a very wealthy, highly influential family right there in the same village. Babli would visit Manoj's shop after school, and despite knowing the severe danger of crossing those Gotra lines, they developed a profound bond. They completely defied all the rules their society had built around them. As you can imagine, their decision to elope triggered a rapid and deadly chain of events. On April 6th, using an exam as a cover story, Manoj fled to Chandigarh, and Babli vanished as well. The very next day, they got married. They probably thought they were safe, right? Well, that peace was shattered when Babli's family filed a kidnapping charges. This forced the couple out of hiding and into a Kaithal court on June 15th. Now, in court, Babli boldly stood up and testified that she married Manoj of her own free will, completely clearing him of the kidnapping charges. Fearing for their lives, they begged for police protection to leave the city, and they got it. But inexplicably, later that exact same day, their police escort abandoned them at the Pipli bus stand. By June 23rd, their badly decomposed bodies were discovered in local canals. The tragedy really hit its horrific climax back on June 15th at that bus stand. It's literally the stuff of nightmares. Babli's own grandfather, a man named Gangaraj, who happened to be the powerful head of the khap panchayat, led a mob of 16 relatives to ambush them. We're talking about Babli's own uncles and cousins here. They threw the couple into a Scorpio SUV. Manoj was brutally beaten and, according to reports, actually dragged behind the car. Babli was forced to sit there and watch the love of her life be tortured to death. Utterly broken, her final recorded words to her own family were simply, "You've killed my husband, now kill me too." After enduring even more abuse, she was forced to swallow poison. It seemed like the perfect crime, orchestrated by powerful people. But, well, the perpetrators made a mistake. A brave road contractor's quick thinking actually kicked off a forensic investigation that began to unravel the collapse's entire cover-up. This local contractor, Kuldeep Singh, happened to witness the kidnapping at the bus stand. He immediately called the police and, crucially, gave them the license plate number of that Scorpio. This tip led authorities straight to the driver, a guy named Mandeep. Mandeep eventually broke under interrogation and named Babli's relatives as the killers. But he also dropped a massive bombshell. The killers hadn't actually used the Scorpio to dispose of the bodies. To cover their tracks, they had transferred Manoj and Babli into a completely different vehicle, a little Maruti 800. So investigators go hunting for this Maruti 800, and they track it down to a local mechanic's scrap shop. Get this, it was moments away from being completely dismantled and destroyed. But when forensics got in there and vacuumed the interior, they found an absolute goldmine of undeniable, hard evidence. They uncovered 2 buttons that had been ripped from Manoj's shirt, fragments of Babli's anklet, hairpins, burnt photographs of the couple, and actual blood traces on the back seat. DNA testing later definitively matched that blood to Babli's mother. This physical evidence was a total game changer for the prosecution. It made it practically impossible for the culprits to just deny their involvement. But of course, corruption fought back, and it fought back hard. The khap panchayat actually fined anyone in the village 25,000 rupees simply for speaking to Manoj's grieving family. Imagine that. Plus, Gangaraj wasn't just a khap leader. He was a highly influential local politician. The entire village boycotted Manoj's family, and not a single local lawyer would even touch their case. It gets worse. The police openly stated in court that arresting Gangaraj would cause local law and order to break down. And because Gangaraj controlled a massive voting bloc, the case was intentionally frozen during state elections. Manoj's mother and sister lived under 24/7 threats, with assassins even attempting to take his sister's life just to scare them into dropping the charges. What happened next was just an unbelievable legal roller coaster. In 2010, thanks to relentless pressure from women's rights activists and massive media scrutiny, a sessions court handed down a genuinely historic ruling. They gave 5 death sentences for Babli's relatives and life in prison for Gangaraj. It was totally unprecedented. But the khap panchayat didn't back down. They rallied, collected funds from every household in the village, and appealed the decision. By 2011, the High Court reduced those death sentences down to life imprisonment. And shockingly, Gangaraj and another relative were acquitted entirely. The court noted that local police had actually intentionally botched the investigation and tampered with evidence to ensure Gangaraj had a perfect alibi, conveniently placing his phone 60 kilometers away during the murders. Now, during that initial 2010 verdict, Judge Vani Gopal Sharma said something absolutely crucial. She struck right at the heart of the issue, bravely declaring that these extrajudicial councils were operating completely outside the bounds of the Indian Constitution. Her words were a powerful, definitive statement that the law of the land must supersede violent local traditions. But, the mere fact that a sitting judge received anonymous death threats just for doing her job, that shows you exactly how deeply entrenched and dangerous these local power structures truly are. Ultimately, the tragic ripple effect of Manoj and Babli's deaths did lead to something bigger. Fueled by activists like Jagmati Sangwin, this case led to a monumental Supreme Court ruling protecting the fundamental rights of young couples. Yes, the criminal trial had a really bitter end for Manoj's family, but the public outrage catalyzed massive legal reform. In 2018, the Supreme Court of India passed the Shakti Vahini ruling. This explicitly criminalized any interference by khap panchayats or assemblies in the marriages of consenting adults. And perhaps most importantly, it completely shifted the burden of accountability. Now, if an honor killing or harassment occurs, the local district magistrate and police officials are held personally responsible for failing to prevent it. That is a massive systemic shift. So we leave you with this final thought. With key architects of the crime like Gangaraj escaping punishment due to sheer political influence, does a victory in the Supreme Court mean true justice on the ground? Manoj and Babli paid the absolute ultimate price just for choosing who to love. And while their sacrifice undeniably forced a historic shift in national law, the very people who orchestrated their murders manipulated the system to walk free. It really begs the question, when ancient traditions clash with modern laws, how many generations will it take for the law to truly actively protect the vulnerable? Keep thinking about that and keep questioning the structures around you. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.